Okay, if everybody would take a seat, we'll get started for the July meeting of the Capital Program Oversight Committee. Do we have any public speakers?
No public speakers.
Okay. Approval of minutes from June. Any comments or questions? May I have a motion to approve? Seconded? All in favor? Aye. Committee work plan, Mr. Stewart.
There's one change to the work plan. The presentation on new fare payment will not be given today. We move it to October to coincide with New York City Transit's communications system presentation. This will provide a more comprehensive presentation of the new fare payment project.
Thank you. Now we'll have the New York City Transit Capital Program update. First up is John O'Grady for the Capital Sandy Recovery and Resiliency.
Good afternoon. John O'Grady here. Since mid-2013, I've been in charge of an effort to recover the transit system from the damage caused by Hurricane Sandy. This is a substantial effort. But the goal is to recover the system, effect permanent repair, to build in resiliency where you can, and to build separate resiliency projects as approved. Assisting me in this effort is someone who has just moved on to another position, Alok Saha. He's not here today, but I just wanted to acknowledge that he has been the cornerstone of the success of the Sandy program to date. The challenge facing transit is significant. A significant part of the transit system, as exemplified here on this map, shows the degree of vulnerability that we have for the assets that support the operations of the railroad. Under-river tunnels, stations, fen plants, circuit breaker houses, substations, all are vulnerable to flooding. All of them are necessary to run the system, and without protection and without permanent repair, the system could be subject to outages. The goal is to protect the transit system from a Category 2 storm. We are aggressively pursuing that, subject to available dollars, and those available dollars, our needs exceed the dollars available. However, we are working with our funding partners to effect as much repair and resiliency as we can. We have a report that covers 4 categories of work: stations, under-river tunnels, yards, terminals, and shops, and then as well as resiliency at its core. Before we get into the 4 aspects of work, I'd just like to report on our overall performance to date. Since the inception of this effort, we've awarded $1.5 billion worth of work. So in 2 years, we have awarded $1.5 billion worth of work. We currently have available to us a total funding envelope of some $4.1 billion. So we are well along on the overall funded program for the Sandy Recovery and Resiliency. If I could also then just continue on, I have 2015 commitments of some $250 million of awards and pending awards of some $450 million. Now, the one thing that I'm going to take a little bit of engineering liberty on here right now is the Joralemon 2 rehabilitation, which shows up as an award. Actually, we're going to miss it by a couple of days. It's still pending and should be signed award this week. So I'm going to take a little bit of liberty and say it's awarded. With regards to planned work, most of what you see on this list is resiliency work, protecting some of the ingress points for water flooding. With the non-resiliency work on this list is 148th Street Yard. So $250 million has been awarded so far in 2015, with a balance of $460 million to be awarded as we progress throughout the rest of 15. And into 2016, we have planned $1.5 billion worth of work. Just a timeline across the 4 categories of work. South Ferry is the largest project in the stations category. We'll talk about that a little bit further in the presentation. With regards to the under-river tunnels, we have 6 of them in construction, 2 of them essentially complete, the other 4 underway, with 3 more in design. Yards, terminals, and shops. St. George is the largest project in that category at this time. That's awarded. We'll talk about that further in a minute. And then we have the resiliency projects, a number of them awarded and a number of them pending throughout the balance of this year and into next year. The resiliency projects are, for the most part, the source of the small business federal program projects. With regards to stations, we can move that on. We have the 3 stations. We have 2 in design and 1 awarded. Again, we're going to be talking about South Ferry. That project, a $344 million project, $194 million at bid, was awarded in November of 2014, and it is now July of 2015. The first 6 months of that project were spent on a grout operation, which I'll get into in a minute. But this is a project that's proceeding on schedule, and it will be the full rehabilitation of that station complex. Good. The grout operation is a significant operation, and I think I've talked about it at prior CPOC. This is where we are drilling through the structure and performing what is called positive side grouting. When the station opened in 2009, it had a number of persistent leaks. The construction that was done at that time had some compromised waterproofing, so that was actually the source of the leaking into the station. By drilling through the structure, we are injecting through the structure a new polymer-based grout that travels on the outside of the structure and essentially starts to seal off and reestablish a waterproofing membrane. Holistically, it is supposed to create a complete membrane. The reality of it is that it creates as much of a membrane as is necessary to stop the water leaking problems. It has been very successful to date. The photo in the right-hand corner shows the wall of the station with the finishes removed, and you can see the vertical dark areas where where the water has continued to leak into the structure. Then the after photo down below is where the grout has been injected into the structure, and the water leaking has stopped. So we effectively have completed the grout operation, and we are now in what is referred to as the observation period. This is where we go back in after a couple and make another pass at the grouting if necessary, if a leak continues to persist. We've had positive results in all areas, and from a personal perspective, it's been much more successful than even I had anticipated it would be. I would have been happy with an 80% success rate, and we're well beyond that at this point in time. We had 9 tunnels damaged in Superstorm Sandy. I'm going to take credit again because I like to do that at these meetings, come back and say the same thing with regards to the fact that we completed Greenpoint Tube in September of 2014, work essentially completed by in-house forces, and the overall project was completed in December of 2014. Montague, another substantial effort by contracting forces, was completed in September of 2014 with the overall project completion in March of 2015. That sets the stage for our follow-up projects in construction, which is 53rd, Steinway, Cranberry, and Joralemon. All of these projects, again, Joralemon being the one that will be awarded in the next couple of days, will be in construction over the next couple of months. Now, when we talk about 4 under-river tubes under construction, there's always a question with regards to service outages. The overall schedule and the outages for these projects is coordinated with the core program, but also then with an eye on the service that we provide. Follow-up projects in design are Canarsie, Rutgers, and Clark. These projects will be coming back to the board, CPOC, on as we determine the exact time of award and the outages that will be necessary to support. Yards, terminals, and shops is one of the categories of work that has an extensive need, and we will see how far the available dollars take us. With regards to what's been completed to date, we completed the temporary resiliency project out at Coney Island Yard. We have in construction the Stillwell Terminal employee facilities, as well as a cable to deal with the power and communications cables at Rock Park Yard. In design, though, are 4 major projects: 207th, 148th, Rock Park, and Coney Island. These are substantial projects in that we need to build resiliency into the overall facility, while also building in repair to all of the elements that were damaged during Superstorm Sandy. The project to focus on in this category of work is the St. George Terminal. This is an artist rendering of what this area will look like shortly. What you see in the middle of the left-hand photo is the bus terminal area. Underneath this general area and underneath the green area in the middle is effectively the terminal for the Staten Island Railroad St. George. Off to the right is the ball field, and a little bit further off to the right is the is the New York wheel. You have a tremendous amount of development, redevelopment happening within this very tight site, and so we're advancing this project. We're advancing this project that was awarded in September 2014 with an overall 30-month duration. It has 10 phases of work, and so what you saw beneath that rendering is essentially the rebuilding of this complete facility, the terminal for Staten Island Railroad at St. George. With regards to competitive resiliency and the needs of the system, they're extraordinary. We need to protect street-level openings, tunnel portals, substations, pumping system improvements, general room hardening, right-of-way equipment hardening, critical depots, bus depots, emergency communications, etc. Furthermore, with regards to just local resiliency, we have a number of vulnerabilities through street-level openings. 5,600 total street-level openings that are potentially flood ingress points. 109 street stairs, 3,000 vent bays. Just as an example, that's about 10%, a little less than 10% of the total vent bay population. 104 hatches, 460 manholes, 7 elevators, 7 escalators. To bring about solutions to these, we've had to work with numerous firms to develop site-specific solutions. On the upper left-hand corner, you actually see a flexible stair gate closure. This is a device developed solely for transit that is now being marketed to other agencies, other firms, other buildings, et cetera. But this is adaptive reuse of space technology to provide that allows for us to store on-site, staircase at the entrance to the station, a deployable stair cover that gets pulled out, cinched down, tightened up, and provides for full protection of that street-level opening from flooding. The lower left-hand corner is a different type of hardening. It's a hardened steel hardening of the staircase. This is something that would have to be deployed to the site from a storage location and installed in place in advance of the storm. Upper right-hand corner is building in resiliency within the new stair entrance canopy at South Ferry. This is where we're rebuilding the entrance with a hardened, structurally sufficient wall, knee wall, and then a hardened glass glazing. And then built within the ceiling of that staircase will be a pull-down stair closure that will allow that stair to be closed should the type of event develop. We'll also be working with watertight doors. Other resiliency solutions that we're utilizing are resiliency stair covers, upper left-hand corner deployable vent covers. This is just a slightly better version of plywood that would have been used should we had an event. Lower left-hand corner is mechanical closure device. This was developed, again, just for transit. It is a bottomless box whose spine is deployed. It sits in the vent bay, and in advance of a storm, the bottom would be released so that the vent bay would be closed off. Upper right-hand corner, we have numerous hatches, equipment hatches, personnel hatches, emergency exit hatches that all have to be made watertight. So we've worked with manufacturers to develop them, and now we're starting to install them. Similarly, for manholes, we've developed watertight manhole closure inserts. However, keeping the water out of the manhole is one step. Assuming that that insert fails, we also then have to protect the manhole-to-manhole duct bank runs at either end in order to provide a layer of protection against flooding, water infiltration to the system. With regards to other types of elements, we have elevators that need to have hardened glazing, and we're doing so in the 2 locations that are necessary. We'll be providing a stop log enclosure at these locations, again, to be deployed in the event of a Sandy type event. And finally, I have a tunnel portal flood protection, couple of photos to show. In this case, again, this manufacturer that works for Department of Defense and the Space, NASA, has been working with us to develop a flexible closure device, again, that would be left on site, left at the location and deployed as necessary should there be a threat of flooding. In this case, this manufacturer built a full-size mock-up of a tunnel portal. They then deployed, middle picture, their flexible closure device. We flooded that to a height of 14 feet, and we observed a very, very acceptable rate of leakage. In other words, it's very, very minor relative to what it could be in the event of a storm. And then what you see in the right-hand photo is the gate rolled up into its closed position. So overall, we're continuing to advance the overall Sandy program. I wanted to thank Fred Smith for his guidance as Senior Vice President. As was announced earlier, or acknowledged earlier, Fred is leaving us. I hate to see him leave because he provided a level of protection that saved me from Sandy type of events. Anyway, thank you all.
I should have said at the front of the meeting, Fred is retiring after a very long career, both at Long Island Railroad and here. How many years, Fred? And I believe it's in his family blood, because I believe your grandfather or father was at the Long Island Railroad.
Well, between Dad and I, we have worked here within the MTA family for 86 out of the last 97 years.
So Fred will take a wealth of experience with him, but he's left some able people behind him, and John O'Grady is one. But I'd like to thank you. I've worked with Fred 3 different times, New York City Transit, then over at Long Island Railroad and back when I was back at New York City Transit. So he's had a very long and established career. Any questions for John? One of the more aggressive things we need to do is there's still some money out there need to be competed for on the resiliency side. And unfortunately, I did use the word competitive because we do have to compete for it. It's not going to come to us just because we're the big dog in town. So we need to be able to do that in a very aggressive way and get that money because there's still a lot of work to be done. We're going to have the independent engineer have a report, Mohammed Mohammedinia, on the South Ferry Station Complex project review. Mohammed?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. The South Ferry Rehabilitation Project. The project is progressing as per the approved contractor schedule. The project is on budget. Expenditures to date reflect the actual percentage of project completion. As far as findings, the New York City Transit Rehabilitation Design incorporated modifications to the grouting methodology to improve the station waterproofing. The IEC has independently reviewed the alternate means and methods of grouting and has verified the effectiveness and success of this process to date.
Sure. Mr. Farrar?
I asked the IEC, is it your experience that this approach has been tried in other applications, and if so, where and with what success?
This grout, NOH2O, has been used internationally quite a bit. We use it here in the Montague, and it's been quite successful too. It's, the results to date suggest grouting is capable of creating an effective water barrier. Some leakage is expected, consistent with other grouting programs.
What other systems has this approach shown success in?
Montague, for one. They used it in a structural box very
Outside of our own, though?
Yes, they used it in a structural box very similar to the box that we have here in Singapore, and it's been completely dry for years now.
Hindsight being 2010, not 2020, maybe knowing what we know now, if we could go back and do the original design on South Ferry and do the construction, we could have used more aggressive methods to be able to capture water and pump it out. And maybe that's a lesson learned going forward into the future, but there was really no way to go back and recapture that once the construction was done. I mean, I can tell you I was surprised. I know John said he was surprised, but so far it's been very effective, because prior to this, it almost used to rain down there at certain times.
There's 2 sides to this grouting. One is the positive side grouting, which wasn't used before, which is actually drilling through the membrane. And the second is the actual grout that's being changed, which has the viscosity of water. And it goes through every crack, and it goes everywhere. So this is both techniques that weren't used the first time around. And it's been shown to be quite successful.
So it has the viscosity of the water until it hardens, and then it hardens, and it's much more of a barrier.
You control where you want it to be hardened by additives.
Okay, thank you. Next presentation's communication-based train control, and that'll be given by Nadish Patel.
My name is Nitish Patel, and today I'll brief you on the result of the risk assessment workshop we conducted for the CBTC Queens Boulevard Line project. This CBTC contract will be awarded in two phases, design furnish phase 1 and installation phase, and I will give you some more detail in the next slide. This corridor operates 4 lines, E, F, M, and R, and shown in this slide are the limits within each of the 4 lines where CBTC will be deployed. CBTC Queens Boulevard Line West Phase 1 contract S48004 will design, furnish, test, and place in service CBTC system, including the data communication and automatic train supervisory system. Phase 1 contract will be awarded to Thales and Siemens. Phase 2 contract S48005 will install CBTC data communication system, automatic train supervisory system, plus in addition, design, furnish, install, and test and place in service the auxiliary conventional signaling system. It will also rehab the existing wayside facility to support the CBTC. This contract is scheduled to be awarded next year upon funding availability of the 15-19 capital program. The base budget for both the phases is $548 million, and the base schedule, a combined schedule, total schedule in months for both phase and 2 is 75 months. We did have a risk assessment workshop in April 2015. Risk-informed budget for 80% confidence level, unmitigated is $571 million, and mitigated is $564 million. But as we know more information, we are in July and we have certain information, so we feel comfortable today that the base budget can be accepted as a mitigated budget. For the schedule, the base schedule is 75 months, mitigated is 74 months, but we will keep 75 months as we don't know at this time when we're going to award the installation contract. I will tell you the major project activity, and then I will run through the major project risk and how we mitigating those risks. So major project activities are the design and furnish all the CBTC and the signal equipment, installation of CBTC equipment on 309 4 and 5 car units at Coney Island, Jamaica, and East New York shop by in-house people, installation of CBTC and wayside equipment on 43 track miles, installation of CBTC equipment on 7 relay rooms, and design, furnish, and installation of automatic train supervisory system, which will be expandable to ensure the operational consistency when future CBTC lines are added. Next thing I will discuss the top project risk and their mitigation plan. Availability of 2015-19 budget causing a delay in award of installation contract 48005, and any delay to this will be mitigated by modifying the installation contract requirement. Availability of work train crews, and flagger will be mitigated by prioritizing and proper coordination. The risk of coordination between in-house forces and other contractor and track department will be mitigated with the proper coordination between the car shop, operation planning, and RTO, and also coordination with the track department on a continuous basis. And this concludes my presentation. Any question?
Mr. Albert, you have some questions?
Yeah. In one of the first slides where you give the geographic limits of the CBTC installation, what happens if you have, in the case of the F, CBTC as far west as 21st Street, Queensbridge, on the M as far as 47th, 50th Street, Rockefeller Center, and you deposit trains from both lines on the 6th Avenue line, which does not have CBTC south of 47th, 50th Street. You fit in extra trains thanks to the CB. I assume you're not going to turn it on until a whole line is complete. Is that the way it works? Well, then how do you deliver it and then put it in a place that doesn't have CBTC and manage it?
Well, you
Let me-
control the number of trains that go on a track by the scheduling, and you can't put more trains on the track than what the signal system would enable. But you have to install the CBTC in phases anyway.
But you don't get the benefit until the entire line is CBTC, correct?
No, we do. We do get benefits. So our program going forward is a comprehensive strategy, which involves not just our traditional modernization of the signal program, but our entire fleet purchases going forward, and now the overlay of CBTC. So we have spent the last couple of years putting all three of those together to make sure that we had a comprehensive strategy. One of the key benefits of CBTC is the safety provisions. And we've talked about this in previous meetings where the civil speed protection can be provided initially. Once you equip the trains, which is why we changed our strategy to put the fleet as part of it. And you saw on the slide that almost 1,600 cars will be equipped with the CBTC. Having the database loaded will provide civil speed protection in those areas where we activate it, so we can immediately reap the safety benefits even though we may not have the capacity improvements right away. And in the areas where we do deploy it, you will have those protections. If the train travels outside of that, it'll still be under the normal wayside protection. But this will enable us to maximize those benefits as we can progress through the entire universe of lines.
Let me just ask an example. Let's say you've got it on, you've installed it and it's operational on the M line, okay? And you've been able to, by means of the CBTC, fit in another 2 trains per hour on the M line. When those trains get to a non-CBTC equipped section of the line, how do you manage those extra 2 trains per hour if the existing signal system can't handle those?
Okay. For example, the example you gave in the case of the M line, we are not at full capacity today. So the fact that we're adding trains on the Queens Boulevard line, and then they separate out and go down either 6th Avenue or 8th Avenue, you're not exceeding that capacity on those lines presently. It affords us the opportunity down the road to continue to push the system and add more and more trains further down the line. But right now, we do have the capacity on those corridors.
Or you could turn trains in Manhattan and send them back. I mean, there's any one of a number of things you can do with greater flexibility, but we still have to modernize the signal system. We have to replace the wayside block signal system, so, yeah. I mean, it's not, I wouldn't say it's a little-known fact, but there have been times where we've had to cut a long line that starts in Coney Island, goes all the way out to Queens, and run it in 2 segments because we've had problems with hurricanes or whatever, and believe it or not, the 2 segments run better than the whole line runs. And you can understand that. But this will give us greater flexibility, but Fred's right, I forgot, there's additional capacity on the 6th and 8th Avenue lines that we use up. Any further questions? If not, we'll have the, Jerry Gardvitz is going to give the independent engineers review.
Good afternoon. We have just a few comments. The first one on the methodology. We viewed the workshop as comprehensive. It included all the departments, so it brought in all the stakeholders, and they were able to discuss all the issues with them. At the workshop, the activity sequences, the links and assumptions were all reasonable, so this was a good exercise for bringing all the stakeholders together. As far as the budget and schedule, the major cost areas and activities and durations were assessed for any possible budget savings or schedule opportunities. Where the risks were identified, the mitigation measures were adopted to reduce a lot of the uncertainties. The outcome gives a good range of the cost and schedule picture at this point. The last point on our remarks here is the possible issue of the availability of GOs. This is a recurring theme that's occurred on a lot of these signal projects, especially the availability of these GOs within the last 18 to 24 months of the project. The mitigated risk assessment on this project will have a high priority for receiving GOs, but during the risk assessment, it's very hard to quantify the uncertainty or the criticality of GOs needed later in the project, because that's at the point where the contractor really needs these GOs. Otherwise, he really can't do a lot of the work. So that last comment is basically the contractor and the project is highly dependent on the availability of these GOs towards the end of the project. That concludes our remarks.
So if I can just follow up a little bit, Andrew, this morning at TA Committee, you had asked about this also and the importance of an integrated work schedule. The 10 to 14 capital program was built around the signals program because it involved so many outages because of the long wayside areas that we install equipment. Going forward in the 15 to 19, the program that has been proposed is, again, based around signals and Sandy together. And we've had to make some modifications with both as far as what John presented, where some of the tunnels that we had laid out, we originally were going to try to do earlier. We now have moved them around in order to maximize the signals program and the Sandy program. But we had to do some moving some things out to later years and bringing some things in order to accomplish that. But all the other projects within the 15 to 19 will be based around signals and Sandy.
The challenge going forward is picking up the pace on CBTC, which is what we need to do, and balancing that against how many outages we're going to have. And there'll be some, I dare say there'll be some healthy tension discussions with stakeholders on that. Next presentation is the update on minority, women, and disadvantaged business participation. That's Michael Garner and Gwen Harleston.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Gwen is going to give you the most recent MW DBE inclusion metrics, and these are for contract awards.
Good afternoon. On page 45 of your booklet, you will find the DBE, or the federal participation for capital projects with goals. Between January and June, we are projecting to achieve a 20% DBE participation, which exceeds the 17% DBE goal that MTA has established. On page 46 is where we have the state participation on capital projects with goals. For MBE, overall, we are anticipating achieving a 19% goal, which will also exceed MTA's MBE goal of 15%. For WBE, we are anticipating achieving an 11% goal, which is slightly below the 15% that we are projecting to achieve. But if you look at both MWBE, we are at 30%, which is our new goal.
Any comments or questions?
Is there a specific reason or a set of reasons you believe does not allow us to meet the WBE goal?
So although we have a annual 30% MWBE goal, as goals are allocated, it's allocated based upon the availability on single procurements. And so in some cases, there was no availability of WBE firms in the marketplace to support the 15% goal. So between the agency and the industry and my area, we looked and we negotiated a goal downward.
So in other words, it's the lack of qualified companies to bid.
Right.
Okay.
Or the lack of certified WBE firms in the marketplace that can support the goal.
Right. Understand. Okay. Thank you.
But where those agreements are reached, we have to make up for it in other contracts.
Yes. Right. So on certain contracts, we will establish a higher goal in order to offset. So that's what we did with respect to the DBE goals. Although we have a 17% DBE goal, we are currently achieving 20% because we put a higher goal on those contracts, whereas in the past there were lower goals put in certain areas.
Any other comments, questions? If not, we'll go to the update on small business development programs. Brian Murphy and George Cleary. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Brian Murphy. I'm Deputy Director, Office of Construction Oversight, Department of Capital Programs. I'm joined by George Cleary, who's the Deputy Director, Small Business Mentoring Program within the Department of Civil Rights and Diversity. I'd like to start out with the mission statement that we've developed, and I'm going to read it through. It reads, to develop and grow emerging contractors through classes, on-the-job training, and technical assistance in prime contracting with MTA agencies, thereby creating a larger pool of diverse, qualified contractors who compete for and complete MTA construction projects safely, timely, and within budget. I'm going to give you an update on all of the 3 elements of the development program, starting with the Tier 1. This year marks the 5th year since the legislation was created in July of 2010. We report on a program year, which runs from the middle of July, July 15th, to July 14th. The Tier 1 program consists of New York State and local funding, with prime contracts up to $1 million. We currently have 140 pre-qualified firms in the program. These firms can participate for a maximum of 4 years, and we've recently graduated out firms from the program who have been in for that period of time. And as a reminder, this particular program, Tier 1, does not require a bond from the participants. The next slide shows typical projects that we've been doing in the Tier 1. Of these projects, stair replacements and Health Point Intercom are the most common programs that we're undertaking. With regards to the actual awards in the first 5 years, we had 171 projects. Our goal was $92 million, and we've actually awarded $107 million, and that was awarded to 112 firms. For the upcoming year, program year 16, the award goal is $28 million, and that will be dependent upon the funding of the capital program so that we can do the construction. With regards to the next slide, we have process matrix that we've set up in cooperation with the agencies in order to expedite various elements of the contracting program. We've done well in the area of payments and awards. We have some work to do with closeouts and change orders with some outlier projects that are skewing the results. With regards to achievements in Tier 1, we've received 508 applications over the 5-year period. We've pre-qualified 255 firms over that same time. 112 firms have been awarded projects since the inception, and of those 112, 45 of them have received 2 or more projects. There are also several participants in the program that have obtained MTA contracts outside of the development program. One example of a successful program is at the Jackie Gleason Bus Depot, where Red and Blue Construction, a New York State certified MBE firm, did a entrance and parking lot repavement project where you see the before and after pictures up above, and that project value was $873,000. Moving to Tier 2, that was launched in July of last year. In this program, they're state-funded prime contracts in the range of $1 million to $3 million. Again, it's participation up to 4 years. In the Tier 2 program, performance and payments bonds are required. We currently have 33 pre-qualified firms, all of which were graduates of Tier 1, which is a requirement for the Tier 2 program. With regards to results in our first year, we had a goal of $15 million. We exceeded that at $24 million. There were 12 projects that were awarded to 11 firms. For next year, our goal is $26 million. An example of a Tier 2 project is the East 180th Street Maintenance Facility remediation project. That was awarded to SAI Services, and the value was just above $3 million, and it's currently under construction. For the federal program, which was launched in 2012, we have federally funded programs up to $3 million with a maximum participation of 3 years in the program. Payment and performance bonds are required. There are 34 pre-qualified firms, 21 of whom came from the Tier 1 program. We've had 16 firms that have been awarded projects since inception, and 10 of those 16 firms were awarded 2 or more projects. The results for the first 2 years of the program there were 30 projects awarded to 16 firms. The goal was $30 million. We actually awarded double that at $60 million. Our goal for next year is $26 million. An example of a federal program is the upgrade of bus washers at Elmer Park and Flatbush Bus Depot. That went to a New York State MBE or WBE certified firm, formally certified. They've actually grown out of the program. Their revenues are too high to stay in the program, and that company's name is Masterpiece, and that contract was worth $2.9 million. The next slide shows you some of the competitive bidding that was done in all 3 programs. The takeaway from this is that in the aggregate, the bids do fall in line with the engineer's estimates. Some are high, some are low, but on the aggregate, we are right in the line with where the engineers have estimated the projects. The next slide, I think, shows a very good success story. It shows the growth through the 5 years with the addition of the new programs that have come over time. The total program awards this past program years is 63% greater than the previous year. And lastly, we would like to inform the committee that the construction management services contract currently with TDX Construction expires in July of next year. So we'll be going out with a request for proposal for a new contract at the end of this year, and the expectation is to award in the second quarter of 2016. And now I'll turn it over to George Cleary to discuss the business development.
Good afternoon. If you look at this slide, our outreach efforts focus on all the counties that the MTA services. Breakdown shows the number of firms and the county that they reside in. Most recently, we have had outreach events in Suffolk County and Nassau County, and in the fall, we're planning on doing several outreach events in Westchester, Orange, and Orange County, and those are the counties that the MTA Metro-North Railroad services. Next slide. Next slide is our loan program. With partnership with Carver Bank, we've had 49 loans over the 5 years, totaling $5.9 million. And in year 5, we still have 20 loans that are in underwriting as we speak. And as you look at year 5, the loan amount would exceed the total amount of the first 4 years. Next slide. 30 bond program. We had 45 firms that graduated from Tier 1. 32 of those firms graduated with bond surety letters. And the MTA bond program assisted 7 firms in obtaining bond surety letters. And those 7 firms, the total capacity of bonding was $36 million in aggregate. And most recently, in our Tier 2, Lachey Construction Development Corp. was awarded a $2.6 million contract, and the owner was able to secure surety bond of $3 million. Our next slide shows our MWB accomplishment. In Tier 1, our goal is 30% MWB goal, and we have had 78% of all contracts were awarded to New York State certified MWBs, and the total amount was $83.9 million in awards. Our next slide is Tier 2. Tier 2, we had 92% of all contracts that were awarded to MWBs. Again, the 30% goal, and totaling $21.8 million. Going to the next slide. Similarly, and this is the federal program. With DBE goals of 17%, we had 40% of all contracts that were awarded to certified DBE contractors. These next three slides shows firms that were awarded contracts based on ethnicity and gender. And as we look at the numbers, we recognize that there's a need to improve on these numbers, in particular in the Hispanic, Black, and Asian Pacific minority group. And we're focusing our marketing efforts in recruiting and targeting a broader pool of firms in those ethnic groups. And we have put together an action plan to address this issue. And that action plan states that, one, we're going to target ethnic groups and associations that included Blacks, Hispanic, and Asian Pacific. We're also going to advertise in ethnic groups, newspaper, journals, periodicals, and other media outlets. And third, we've had some conversation, internal conversation. We're going to be reviewing our pre-qualification policy. Okay. The next page is just showing you the breakout by federal program. Page 27. With the amount of awards that we have handed out, it contributes to 4,500 jobs in the 14 counties that we serve. The next slide is a projection of estimate of the 2015-2019 capital program. With the approval of the capital plan, we hope that we'll have approximately $500 million over the next 5 years allocated to the program, and we anticipate 430 projects, and we anticipate that with these numbers, with job creation of about 12,000 jobs. Our training program. Over the 5 years, we have had 226 firms participated in the program, in the training program. And as we look at the training program, there are 11 courses classes that they take. And in the fall, coming up this fall, we're going to add 2 additional classes, prevailing wages and navigating the MTA contracts and MWB compliance. The next step, as we move on, we're looking to recruit, as I mentioned earlier, more diverse pool of contractors, in particular Blacks, Hispanic, and Asian Pacific. We're also, in support of our contractors, we're going to be looking to hire a business plan consultant, as well as hire back office support consultant to assist our contractors as they move forward. And we're also going to concentrate our recruiting effort, outreach efforts in Orange, Suffolk, Nassau, Westchester, Rockland, and Dutchess County moving forward. And we would like to thank our MTA agency, our personnel who have assisted us throughout the years, and our external partners who have worked hard to the success of the program. Thank you.
Any comments or questions? Susan?
I'm trying to figure out how to word this question politely. Passionately. When this program started in 2010, 2011, we had some troubles getting participation by the agencies. That part of it was a learning kind of curve, but I can remember soliciting small projects that could be used. And it seems that now you're far exceeding the goals that we're setting. And I also know that the agency's personnel, when I'm chatting with them, will tell me very proudly, oh, I've got a project in the Small Business Development Program. And although I recognize that they've learned how to make me very happy, I'm hoping that what it's really suggesting is that the agencies are coming forward with more and more projects that are appropriate. Am I right about that?
Yes, you are right. And we are getting projects. This year we had a great problem, and the problem was that we had more product in the program than we had contractors. And so we took some projects out. And so essentially the agencies, through the cooperation of all the agency presidents and their respective staff, they are fully bought into the program. Our challenge now is going to go out and bring in a more diverse pool of contractors and more contractors. One of the things that we're finding as our listening tour to some of the contractors, one of the things that got us started was that we rated the school construction authority's list of pre-qualified contractors. It's one, it's a great thing. Second, there are a lot of contractors who their business model is to work as a subcontractor to our major third-party contractors. And so they go from one subcontract to the other subcontract to the third subcontract. So that's their business model. So now take this program, which allows them to work directly as a prime contractor to us. A lot of these firms are fearful of the actual paperwork, being in control of their subcontractors and being held accountable. And so in our new marketing strategy that we have, is going to tout the pro-business attributes of paying contractors in 10, 15 days and giving them training and working with them. And so that's part of our selling point as we go out to recruit these historically excluded firms who sometimes work as subcontractors to now being in control of their own destiny and working as prime contractors to the MTA.
I want to add to that. We've also incorporated identifying work as part of our 2015 to 19 planning process. So unlike the previous program where we had to take it out of already existing projects, we are using the capital program process to identify it very early.
I'd like to add, I think it's important to note that, as you were asking, this year we've had a 57% growth in the amount of work that we've had in our program. And it's one of the things that happened was we introduced the Tier 2, and that was a big part of it. But even without the Tier 2, our growth is 10% from last year. So it's had a tremendous growth in the last year. And you got to credit, I'd like to credit the capital program people because, I mean, each of our agencies is challenged with not only making smaller contracts, but achieving the designs, getting the procurements done. We had over 75 contracts that had to be done in the last year. And also the people on the ground. We have TDX, and a lot of credit goes to them for mentoring these companies out there. But also, when you get to Tier 2 in the federal program, a lot of the mentoring is actually being done by the agency people themselves, the project managers on the floor. So it's a tremendous effort, but there's a lot of people who are contributing to this and making it happen.
Hats off to the agencies and to all of you who have really contributed to making this such a hugely successful program. If I may, I have two comments on other topics. The lack of diversity in the program is troubling, and the thing that I'm very appreciative of is that you brought it to the table, pointed it out, and gave us a plan to correct it, because I think that's how we should deal with any problem we see in the system. And lastly, I know Michael will be, in fact, Tom will be attending a competitive edge program tomorrow, which is always a good way to reach into new contractors. So thank you very much.
One of the challenges we're going to have in the next capital program, and it goes beyond just this program, is trying to look at the procurement legislation as it exists today and where we can, without taking away appropriate controls and checks and balances, streamline it so that we can have effective procurements. But there's a lot in what Mike's words were in terms of if you divide a contract up to a number of different pieces and you have more individual contracts you have to manage, it's not just the issue of the design work you have to do and how you change the scope, but the risk you assume, because every time you add an interface between two contractors, that's a risk we assume versus putting that inside a particular contract. And that will be a challenge, but it'll go beyond just the MWDBE program. It'll go to the issue of the capital program, because we got to find a way to deliver a capital program cheaper and quicker. Mr. Ferrer?
Recently, we reviewed and we have already approved in committee a big technology contract where we couldn't find enough diversity in their operations so as to have to waive their goals. I get that. It's also troubling, and is there an approach to try to crack that particular part of the industry, as we have done with some success with signals on the TA side and other things? We looking at that in terms of trying to get in there and encourage collaboration, partnerships, whatever?
I'm glad you asked that question because it's timely. I just had an earlier conversation with Craig Stewart and Transit with some of the DBE fine monies that we are receiving from the IG's office. Historically speaking, we have started talking about creating a mentor-protege program in the signal track work. And we've had about 3 to 4 to 5 meetings. We had the 4 major firms in. And so the goal here would be to take those DBE fine monies and put them into a program that's going to allow us to develop more DBE firms. As you indicated before, in the new 5-year capital plan, there's more than $2 billion that has been allocated towards signal track work. And the goal there would be to create a more robust pool of DBE firms who can support the signal track work that would avert us from reducing or waiving the DBE goals when it comes to that area of work. So those conversations are ongoing. And then we have other areas in which we are taking the same approach also as well, like architect and engineering. You will be approving a RFP that established a pool of M&W BE architects and engineers that we would give short-term assignments to. That same concept is going to be done in the IT area, and that RFP is being scored right now, and it's going to come to the board in September.
Yes, Mr. Paley?
I assume there are a variety of how we measure success in this program. One is obviously by the numbers in that relation, and the numbers obviously are fantastic in moving the project forward. Is another goal of the program, and I saw we now have to start graduating companies because of time periods, is another goal of the program their continued ability to get MTA contracts after they are no longer in the program, and how do we measure that effectiveness?
Yes, so once a firm graduates, it is our goal to graduate these firms with the right training and skill set, access to capital, access to bonding, as you know, is a national problem with these emerging companies having the lack of ability to have access to capital and access to surety bonding. And then basically tracking these firms as they graduate out. There's been a number of firms in this program that are now bidding outside this program. As a matter of fact, the Hurricane Sandy projects, there was one firm, Zion, who bid it in the open market, and they won 2 prime contracts. So yeah, so we view this as a program that we will graduate firms out with the right skill set, access to capital, access to bonding, and ability to compete on the open market. And another metric that we track is job creation. So not only giving these firms the ability to bid to us directly as prime contractors, but creating jobs in MW and DB communities as well.
Thank you.
No further questions. We'll have Craig Stewart, capital program status.
In the interest of time, I'll refer committee members to page 79 for commitments and completions report, and to page 87 for commitments and completions for 2014 projects.
If there's no comments or questions, I just have one closing comment. Try to remember why July 20th was a significant day. It was 46 years ago today. Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon. I didn't see a single thing in the news today or anything. I believe it was July 20th, 1969.
How quickly we forget.
Yes, it's only 46 years ago. No other further business to do. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
consider how many papers left to commemorate all sorts of
Everything.
things.
Yeah.
Every year you'd see something,
Yeah.
you know, it's like.